Hi, you have to hear my voice again, I'm afraid. Good, you really spread out, thanks for that. I'm going to have to spend my whole time walking around. Right, so all-age worship. Can you tell me your experiences of all-age worship? One word, can you describe it? Energetic? Boring? Did I hear boring? Yeah. Difficult? Chaotic? Yeah. Yeah, time-consuming in preparation? Sorry? Not enough of it? Who looks forward to all-age worship when it's coming up? Okay, who dreads it? It's okay to say that you dread it, that's fine. I have historically dreaded it also. I, as a parent of 3 children under 6, have struggled in all-age contexts when I go with my children. And in fact, I have been one of those parents who avoid it, even though I think it's one of the most important things that we do as a church, just because it's often not done very well. I'm sure you all do it perfectly, but in my experience, it doesn't generally meet the needs of the people in the congregation because you're trying to do little bits that meet all different ages' needs, and it can often end up being some sort of chaotic mess of, I don't really know what. But I absolutely love it. I think the concept of all-age worship is yes, absolutely. And I think God looks at it when we meet together as his whole church family and smiles. So what I want to do is I want us to think about what the key elements of all-age worship to start with. Okay. We haven't got long, have we? What is it, 45 minutes? Okay. Shall I put this up? There. Oh, no, it's going to go wrong. Got it. Great. Okay, so key elements of all-age worship then. Go. Nothing. Sorry? There's one over here. Shout. Sorry. Really sorry. Short. This writing is awful. I'm very sorry. Someone said something over here as well. Okay. Any more? Okay. Great. Can you describe yourself in 3 words? We've talked about this a little bit already, so you should be ready primed for this. Can you describe yourself in 3 words? You got a piece of paper? Write them down. If you haven't, I've got some paper. Who needs paper? Anyone over here? Anyone for paper? Okay, now I want you to think about the next question on the screen. What is exciting about being you? Right, in a church context, what is exciting about being you in a church context? So for me, what's exciting about being me is that I get to talk to children about who Jesus is. That's what's exciting for me in my role in church. And what's the challenge about being you? Challenge about being me is that I struggle to sit still and have to do so a lot in church. So they're the things that I would say about me. Can you do yours? Okay, you done? No, silence. Done. Great. Okay. So we are all totally different. Now, there's a piece of my notes missing, which is why I'm struggling a little bit right now. Let me just see if I can find it. Hold on. No, it's gone. Right, so it doesn't matter what age you are, okay? You are potentially an introvert or an extrovert or a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner or an auditory learner. You are also potentially someone who loves singing or someone who hates singing. You could be somebody who loves sport and hates everything else. You could be somebody who hates sport and loves everything else. You could be a person who struggles to be in large groups. You could be a person who, has limited mobility. You could be someone who struggles to hear. You could have a visual impairment. It doesn't matter what age you are, you could still be all of those things. I want to present to you, if you like, something which we call the all-in thing, which is a different way of thinking about all-age worship. So this, historically, is how we think about all-age worship, yeah? So foundation of Jesus at the bottom. Sorry if you can't see. Can you see? I can't lift it up. So Jesus is at the bottom. And then the next premise that we base everything on is the fact that we have all ages in the room, correct? So we think about an all-age service, we think, right, we've got noughts to 100s, give or take, in the room. Yeah? Then on top of that, we think, right, all these things that we said, it needs to be inclusive, interactive, joyful, engaging, reverent, short. That comes in here. That's the next level of thinking. And then finally, we put in the elements of a service, like the songs, the stories, the prayers, and all that sort of stuff. What I'm suggesting is that this layer changes. Okay? What I'm suggesting is that we take out anything to do with age, and instead, we put in people, difference, uniqueness, something along those lines. Because I do not want to sing a song that is for a 3-year-old. I just don't want to do it. I don't want to do silly little actions that make me feel embarrassed, even though I have a nearly 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, but I don't want to stand at anywhere and do an action song for a 3-year-old because I don't want to, okay? However, I want to worship God in a way that makes sense to me. And what we've got to do when we gather as the body of Christ is create a space for people to be themselves. I'm going to sound like a stuck record today, aren't I? But it's important. For people to be themselves and to worship God how he has made them to be. As their person, regardless of their age. Think about Christmas. I thought it might be there somewhere. They're not quite in order, I don't think, sorry. What a perfect time to spend together as a family, yeah? So the beauty of Christmas is that the whole family comes together. in an ideal world, obviously not everyone's family, it doesn't always work, but ideal scenario, the whole family gathers from all over the world together and is, in one place for Christmas to celebrate. Yeah? Ideal? You with me? Okay. So during the day, there are going to be times when the whole family does stuff together. So for example, when it's food time, everybody will be eating together. And they'll be chatting and enjoying each other's company, and you'll all be doing exactly the same thing. There's also going to be times during the day when there's going to be a degree of separation. So some people might be having a coffee and an after-dinner mint. Some maybe mulled wine, some investigating new toys, some watching the snowman, others playing a game on the tablet, others explaining how tablets work to some others. And although there's separate activities going on within the house, the family is still all together. And they might not be doing exactly the same thing all day. The great thing about the celebration of Christmas is that the family is gathered, differences are put aside in favour of being together, and time is invested in relationships without there being an agenda or jobs to do. Even if there's washing, you don't do it on Christmas Day, do you? Well, I don't. There is inevitably some compromise from everybody, especially for the together times, and that's what makes it so good. And what makes it so beautiful, because love is the priority, relationship, getting to know each other. So thinking of all in a similar way is what we like to do. A worship gathering is intended to build relationships with God and each other. The gathered people will have moments of complete unity and togetherness as they engage in a Bible story together or a song. There will be moments of worship where the focus of worship remains Jesus, obviously. That in itself is the unifying element. That is the thing that holds us together. But the vehicle for that worship could be different. Just like on Christmas Day, the focus is to celebrate together, but at points you're all doing different things. Are you following me? You with me? Great. So it could be, the vehicle for the worship could be singing, it could be art, it could be reading, it could be writing, it could be thinking, discussing, or more. I think we've got to start thinking differently about this. And be open to welcoming new people and it being a safe place. So all in, the concept is how I've just described it basically. So the idea is that we have times within the service where we are together. So the key points, so the Bible story, the teaching, the stuff that is foundation to what we're doing, we do together. And then there are also points where we are worshipping God in different ways all at the same time. So the word chaos was mentioned over here. There is still quite a lot of that. But there are three foundations, and I'm going to come back to it. There are three foundations that I think are crucial when it comes to all-in worship. The first is hospitality. When do you ever go to visit somebody and not get offered a drink or something to eat when you walk through the door? It just doesn't happen, does it? And yet we expect people to come to church and wait till the end for a cup of coffee. Not always, but mostly that is what happens. And sometimes there isn't even nice coffee, or coffee at all doesn't exist. I mean, really? The reality is, by the time you get to church, you've already either been up for hours and could do with a drink, or you've just dragged yourself out of bed and made it just on time and could do with a drink. And possibly breakfast as well would be nice. Jesus spent so much of his time eating with people. I went to Bible college, and one of my essays that I had to write in my final year was Jesus killed because of the way he ate? And obviously it wasn't about how he actually ate the food, but I discussed all this stuff about who he met with and who he ate with was so significant, and it probably did play a part in how he ended up dying. It's such a normal thing to do, isn't it? And it relaxes people. You guys chatting about your breakfast this morning, it immediately relaxed you. You could see you weren't thinking, right, I'm going to listen to a talk now. You were thinking, oh, we're chatting about breakfast. Yeah, food is life. And I think people on the welcome team need to have the gift of hospitality, and this is crucial for me. My son Zach, who I mentioned this morning, he clearly has the gift of hospitality. If somebody new comes into our house, he takes them by the hand, he introduces them to everybody, he shows them where the toilet is, he shows them that the light switch is on the outside of the toilet downstairs, so you need to turn it on before you go in, and he makes sure that they feel at home. And I love that. I mean, a 3-year-old showing somebody around your house, making them feel welcome, you can't get much better than that, can you? So it shouldn't be restricted to those who've had welcome training. It should be those who are naturally hospitable. But it shouldn't stop there. The best all-in services are not just welcoming at the door or with coffee, but the hospitality continues throughout the service. Okay, so explain what's happening. You know, when we have a ministry time that might be a little bit strange to some people, like we did earlier, say, if you've got a funny feeling in your tummy, that might mean that God is saying something to you. Come forward and be prayed for. It's not complicated. It's just making people feel at ease. And actually, I think one of the things that we're passionate about with all-in worship is people feeling free to engage with God in different ways. Without getting stares from people. If in this room right now there was a 6-month-old who just started crawling, they would be crawling around the room, and you would smile when they went past you. You would go, oh look, they'd probably be under the chairs, and that would be acceptable, wouldn't it? Would that be acceptable? Yeah. If what's your name? Susie stood up and started wandering around because she was struggling to concentrate, she would be getting funny looks. When actually, it's just as valid for Susie to stand up and wander around because she's struggling to engage as it is for that 6-month-old to be wandering around. It's a total shift in our mindset, I think, to be this welcoming and this hospitable. And in fact, it could change entirely how church works if everybody got on board with it. Okay, so that's hospitality. Ritual is the second thing. Pantomime. There should be a slide with a panto picture on. There it is. Love it or hate it, it works. I hate it, but it works. You know, if someone says, oh, yes, it is. Oh, no, it isn't. He's behind you. You know, all these ritual things that everybody knows about for pantomime. And it facilitates involvement because you know how to respond. You have to know the rituals. And often what happens in church is that you're expecting people to pick up your rituals and to know what they are, when actually we should be hospitable. We should tell people what they're expected to do, but keep that ritual happening. You know, always start all in with the same song every time, for example. People know this is the beginning of the service, and it's happening, and they'll know the song, they'll pick it up, they'll gradually get to know it, and it will become a ritual, but a welcoming one. I'm not saying we should reduce all-age worship all into a pantomime or, you know, something that's ridiculously informal or entertainment. It's just about thinking differently, explaining what is expected of people, and that makes it accessible. How much more accessible to those unchurched who might enter our doors is it if there's a smell of fresh coffee and croissants cooking? Or, you know, how exciting could church be if it was a place where everybody felt like they belonged and didn't need to pretend to be something that they're not? And finally, we've mentioned it already, joy. Why is it that Christians are not always described first as joyful people? We're full of the Holy Spirit. We should be joyful people. Would they use the word joyful? Would people use the word joyful? Did you write it down? Was it a word that... Did anyone write joyful down? How people describe you? No. And this is a real challenge to me, actually. I think I take things too seriously sometimes. I'm afraid to look silly, or I don't know. I don't know why I'm not joyful enough. But, you know, I think we can be more joyful. It doesn't mean you have to be happy the whole time. It doesn't mean you have to be over-the-top enthusiastic and energetic the whole time. It's just about your way of existing. No matter what's going on around you, you can be full of the joy of the Lord because he's made you and he loves you, and it's all going to be okay. And there is definitely a place for reverence, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we shouldn't have contemplation, we shouldn't have quiet in all in, but you can still have joyful reverence. It's attractive as well, isn't it? You want to be around people who are joyful. Okay, so how does it work? Can't really explain all of this in 45 minutes, but I'd love to talk to you more about it, and we do have our resources for sale. So we've written it all in a book called The All In Thing, funnily enough, and there's quite an extensive introduction where I explain the concept behind the new way of thinking about all age and removing that all age line and replacing it with differences or uniqueness or however you want to phrase it, but that people are all different. It's £12, £10 for the CD that's got loads of songs that go with it, £20 for the pair. Save £2, bargain. Okay, so the bit that excites me about All In is not the together times particularly, but it's the times where there is different things to do. So the plan of a standard service might be that you start with a song all together and then you move into a time of, I can't remember, hold on, I'm going to look at the service. Done lots of talking today. Okay, so you sing and you pray, and then you make something together, and then you have the Bible story all together. And then a little bit later, you have this time, which we call the All-in Sync time. Took us a while to come up with that name. It was originally going to be the Chaos time, but we changed it because we thought people would be off-put by that. So it's called the All-in Sync. And basically, you respond to the whole service in this time, and you respond in a way that you choose. So ideally, depending on your building, but ideally there's lots of different zones around the room. And we've split into 6 different zones, thinking that we've got the majority of people within those zones. So we've got sing. That's fairly straightforward. You sing in that one. There is think. Now, my husband is a thinker. He's an introvert. He likes to sit and process on his own. It makes no sense to me whatsoever that he can literally just sit and think about something. There's probably a few of you in here. I think you're great, but I don't get it at all. But think is something that we don't have a lot of space for in church. For the introverts who want to be on their own. And in the think zone, we often provide ear defenders and cushions. So literally, you can go away from everybody else and think about what is the theme for the day and what the response is. So that's think, sing and think. Discuss. Discussion is great. I love talking about stuff, as you might have guessed. But the discuss zone is a place where people who are out loud processors, who need to argue it out, to find the little intricacies of things and talk about it. Discuss is a zone where you can go if you're that sort of person. And to be honest, it's one of my favourite zones because it makes for a great discussion, because the people who go there are discussers. It's not like turn to the person next to you and discuss something, and one of you might be great at discussing and the other one's not. This zone is people who want to talk. It's great. Makes for a great discussion. So then the next one is move. I'm one of these people. And I struggle in church, as I've already mentioned, because I am not allowed to move very much. And in the move zone, it's a physical way of responding to what the point is or the talk. So it could be that it is about, let's say it's about God building his church, or God building, using us all as his body to become a great thing that is a witness to the community, whatever it is. So what we might do, for example, is build bricks, each have a brick, make a brick, and then write on it something, and build a big wall of this is all the people in our church, and this is how we're going to be in our community. So it's a physical way of doing something. There is also create. So creatives, the arty types, they go and make something beautiful. And it's related to the theme, and it is responding to the message and learning through it, through being creative. Write is the next one. Writers don't get a lot of freedom in church either. People who like to write and draw as well. So pen and paper people, basically. So at Spring Harvest, we've just led the 8 to 11s ministry at Spring Harvest down in Minehead, down south. And we've done these zones with the kids, and I was blown away by how many writers there are in kids. So they could choose their options, and there was a lot of thinkers as well, which again blew me away. So they'd go and sit and literally think, and I'm like, you're 8, how are you doing that? But because that's who they are, they went and did it. But the writers, and some of the words they were writing, the poems and the prayers, and I was like, yeah, you clearly are writers. We had to go and buy more pens and paper for the second week because there were so many in our second week that we were doing it. So write. How many is that? Is that 5? That's 6. Yes, I didn't forget one. I usually forget think, which is why I do it first, because it's totally not me. So there's this time, and basically you have your theme. So it could be God is love, and you've talked about God being love, you've had a Bible story all about it, and then you go and respond, and chaos happens, and people go to different zones and respond in different ways. It's absolutely incredible and beautiful, and I love it. And seeing it in action is such an incredible thing. I wish we had more time and we could do it today, but 45 minutes is not long enough to do everything. But the freedom that I think it has, and it takes people a while to get it sometimes. Often the kids get it straight away. I'm not going to split ages really, but they do. They just get it and they go, great, I'm going to go and do that because that's what I like to do. So that happens. And then you gather together after that sort of thing and have a response together, and then close. So there's stuff that you do together and there's stuff that you do separately. This is, in short, what the all-in thing is about. What do you think? Do you have any questions? Do you want to talk about it first and then come back to me? Let's do that. So let's have a think, chat about it with the person next to you, and then come back to me with questions or thoughts or anything. If you're not next to someone, you might have to move. Okay? Thoughts and questions. I can cope if you want to berate me. That's okay. Okay, just another minute. 1 minute left. Okay. Would anybody like to share anything, say anything, ask anything, shout about anything? Timings. So a whole all-in service would be an hour, and the all-in sing time is usually about 15 minutes, 20 at the most, about 15 minutes. Okay, so that was, do you do it all in one room or move into separate rooms? It depends on the building, to be honest. The ideal is that it's all within one room, and kind of creating a bit like that around the edge, but creating different zones around the edge. We've just led all in at Spring Harvest, and we set up zones that need stuff beforehand, and then zones like sing and discuss and think, where they don't need much. You kind of bring it all out and create a place where people can go and collect stuff. If you are limited on space, you can make things for people to go and get and go back to where they were. So the only one that really needs its own space is discuss, because they need to be able to talk, and that could be one that you send out because they're noisy. We've had, so you could come and collect a clipboard and paper and pens with the thing that you're supposed to be writing about, or you could come and collect ear defenders. For the move, you could think of things that are a bit smaller, or even just provide fidget toys. You can get tangle toys, or even pipe cleaners work to help movers take something and then go back to their chair. And sing. Obviously, you can stay where you are to sing, because there's usually a musician in your church. Anyway, so ideally all within the same room, but I know of a massive church up in Derby, down in Derby from here, that they have a huge building and a huge congregation, and they have zones all over the building and spread out, and they have a slightly extended time, because obviously moving takes ages. So their service is about an hour and 15 minutes, and they have all in sync all over the building. So, yeah. Again, freedom to do. There'll be some who'll know exactly where they want to go and will stay there for the whole time. There'll be some who are like, oh, I'm a mover, but I also like making things. So that will move between two. Yeah. Yeah, we have. Actually, we had a little bit of that Spring Harvest. We'd got 300 8s to 11s, and there were a few stragglers who we sent our team to mop up, was the phrase we used. But actually, there was a couple who wanted to do something else. So someone said, can I do some colouring? There's no colouring station. And so we got them some extra pens and paper, and they did some colouring. And actually, I think not a lot in churches, to be honest. But then those kids we picked up, or one of the leaders went and chatted to them and tried to help them think about where they wanted to go. Because often it's fear, particularly with grown-ups. They're like, well, I sit in my chair, thank you. I'm not going to move. When actually, if you could say, look, I can bring some stuff to you. Would you like me to go and get you a piece of paper and a pen to write? Or would you like me to... It is thinking above and beyond about being accessible and inclusive. So, if you have a wheelchair user in your congregation, how can you make sure that everything is accessible for that person? So, providing a clipboard and paper and bringing it to them, or, making sure that the aisles are wide enough, everything above and beyond in everything, really. So, yeah. I think that's age and parent related. So I would leave my two eldest, but I would make sure I was with my youngest. But I think there's what I like to do if we're doing it in a church, especially a church I don't know, is make sure that we have a bouncer on the door, the main door, and actually then you can say, look, parents, kids aren't going to escape. They're not going to get lost. You go to where you want to go and let your kids go to where they want to go. And actually, if you have leaders, for some of them, like Create, often needs somebody to just explain how it works. So a child can go and they haven't got to be able to read to enable them to engage with the zone. So, yeah. No. Yeah, the ideal, I think, is about once a month, once every 6 weeks. It's a big deal to prepare. With the book, though, it's got everything in it. It's got all the activities and everything prepared. You just need to get the stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't do it every week. But I would have elements of it every week. So we have a box, our all-in box, that we have at the back of church that's got some fidget toys, some paper, some ear defenders, some pipe cleaners, some pens, some other stuff. And so if people, when they come in, now they're comfortable with this being helping myself to engage thing, so I always take a tangle toy when I come in because I know I can't keep still. And actually that helps me engage with the talk. So it could be that people take a piece of paper and a pen because they know they need to write to engage. So, yeah. And kids, everybody can do that, yeah. 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 Mm. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it is a big challenge in traditional churches. And actually, there are little things that you can introduce. So the first time I ever so we started in a traditional Anglican church in Birmingham. We moved there to help them with their worship. And all-age worship was something they'd never done, like never had anything like that. And the first time that we led a service, I put in one item of sign language in one chorus of one song. So we just literally added that which is forever into give thanks to the Lord, forever God is faithful. Literally one little thing. And 6 years down the line, when we moved on from the church, people were comfortable doing all sorts of stuff. But it was that gently, and maybe just introducing a tiny little thing. And unfortunately, you've just got to be in it for the long haul if you want things to progress. But having a box of stuff available is not as intrusive. So having that box at the back that people can take things from if they want to, because those who are very traditional and won't want to do it might think, oh, that's just for the kids, when we know it's not, but you might get away with it that way, I think. Yeah. 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 Okay, so that's how you do a talk. Basically, that's what you mean, yeah. How you do a talk that's accessible. So the thing for me is just talk normally. I said to somebody earlier when I was after the response thing that we did earlier, I can't be anything other than myself at the front. And actually, I think what we do often is we get on a stage, and then all of a sudden we turn to somebody that we're not because we feel like, do you know what I mean? And actually, if you're yourself, then I think it will be easier. Keep them short. So I've actually scripted talks within the book. So each service has 2 mini talks, and they're about 3 minutes long. And if you want to read it from a script, it's in the book. But it's just saying things how they are, explaining long words if you've got them. But one of the things for me about talks, it's one of my favourite bits, is to understand things profoundly, then you can explain simply. And so I spend hours preparing things to then be free to explain it in a way that makes sense. And that's the only way to make it work, I think. And not trying to say too much. My main aim for an all-in service is for people to go away with one thing that they all know. It could be that God loves you. It could be more complicated than that. But whatever the one thing is, and everything within the service communicates that one thing, but in different ways. So not try to be too complicated, I think. And actually, you don't always need visual aids. You don't always need stuff. And sometimes that can distract. If you're really short and concise and clear, I think you can engage people. About 3 minutes. And do a couple of them. Yeah. Because everything in the service is making your point. So it's wider than the talk. And actually, if you're not an auditory learner, your talk is not going to be where you pick up your point anyway. So, yeah, it's thinking bigger and wider, I think. There was another hand, yeah. Great. Okay. Could you not leave it set up over the whole summer? Yeah, I'd have a box. Yeah, and almost prepare some little. So the all in sync stuff, make those activities available for people. Then that's only one little bit that you're having to prepare, and stuff people can take to their seats. Yeah. No, I think there's a place for individual age-related teaching. I think it's a real shame if kids don't get the opportunity to do high-energy, jumping around worship and kid things, like playing with a parachute and having loads of fun like that. And I think it's a shame if adults don't get the space to be more contemplative if they want to, and all that sort of stuff. So I think, yeah, I'd have elements of it every week, even in an adult service. Go on then. I know, yeah. Yes. But when we're all together, yeah, I know, totally. This is what I'm saying, why I would have elements of it every week. So I think when we come together, we don't want to think ages. But when it's just natural, isn't it? We separate in ages. But I would have, within every age group, I would have elements of this. So we led the kids ministry at Spring Harvest, but we did this stuff. So we had zones. So after the talk, they had a prayer area, which got called the prayer, which is quite cool. The prayer area where there was lots of different, all this stuff set out, and they could go and respond however they wanted to. So it's infiltrating everything that you do with the mindset of we're all different. Well, I didn't have any major negatives, which is quite nice. Anyone got a burning desire to ask something or say something? You've got 30 seconds. Here we go. They don't know what they're coming to. So I think in many ways you have to explain it less to someone who's totally unchurched, because they come in, and if you're practicing the hospitality, then they'll know what to do, because the first thing will be they get a coffee and a croissant, they can eat them, great, they know what to do with that. And then actually, if you're explaining everything as you go, I think in many ways it's more accessible than we sit in rows and we stand up and we sing a hymn and then we sit down and we do a prayer that's led from the front, and then, in some ways, yeah. Okay, we need to stop. Is it lunch? Okay. Can I just pray before we break? Is that all right? Father God, I thank you that you have created us all differently, and I thank you too for the challenge that it gives us when we come together to worship you. God, I pray for the people in this room now that you will give them creativity, you'll give them fresh ideas, and will you make their churches receptive to new things? We pray that you will help us all to lead all of your people in worship more effectively, because we want to do it to glorify you. Amen.